Hello, my name is Alistair Yeomans. I'm the acting scheme manager of the Plant Healthy Certification Scheme, which is what I'll be talking about today. And firstly, before I start, I would just like to say thank you very much to Hort Science Online 2021 for asking me to present today. So the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the Plant Healthy website. This is where all the information on the Plant Healthy Certification Scheme can be found. It is www.planthealthy.org.uk. So the first question is, why do we need a plant healthy certification scheme? Well, unfortunately, the most common pathway for plant pests to be introduced to a new area is by the movement of live plants. And that means predominantly supply chains and industry supply chains, so the movement of live plant material through the horticultural trade. Now, over the last 20, 30 years, we have realized that actually some of the plant pests and diseases that we can potentially introduce into the country, and indeed have introduced into the country, can be really quite devastating. And a good example of this is the finding of Phytophthora ramorum on a viburnum plant in February 2002 at a garden centre in Sussex. Now, that was one finding in one garden centre. And if you could roll forward to the present day, you'll see that that disease incident has spread all the way up the west side of the country through forestry plantations. And that's because Phytophthora ramorum is a polyphagous plant disease. That means that it can infect more than just one species. So it's jumped from Phytophthora onto forestry species such as larch. Now, these plant pests and diseases, they can really come at quite a cost, not just to the natural environment, which is obviously a significant cost, but also in terms of cleaning them up and trying to manage the disease. And in the case of Phytophthora ramorum, it cost an estimated £23 million over 5 years to try and slow the spread of the disease up the country, as you can see by the picture. As I say, these are polyphagous plant pests, and these are the ones that we have to be particularly cautious of. But ultimately, any plant pest that infects the stock that you grow is going to be of concern to your business and indeed the wider landscape. So just to give you an idea, here's some of the impacts that Phytophthora ramorum has had. On the left-hand side, you can see some larch trees meeting their demise. On the right-hand side, you'll see Phytophthora ramorum, both in California, where it's become a problem as well, and on the right-hand side, the far right-hand side photo, a larch plantation affected in southwest England in May 2010. And now this isn't a problem that's going away. In fact, it's potentially becoming worse, and we know that we're at a point in time where tree planting has become a real tool in the defense against climate change. But at the same time, we have this counteracting problem, which is a lot of the trees that are grown here in the UK and the wider landscape, and that includes our gardens, towns, cities, parks, countryside, forests, are starting to feel the impacts of some quite worrying plant pests and diseases. So we've seen in the 1970s elm trees pretty much wiped out by Dutch elm disease. In 2011, ash dieback unfortunately came into the country. It came both through industry supply chains, and also it was blown on the wind, so it had two pathways of entry. And there's been plenty of other plant pests and diseases that have affected other tree species in the UK. Here's just some of them here: beech, horse chestnut, alder. We've already talked about larch. And some of these diseases will certainly impact the health of the plant, and some indeed will kill the trees. So coming back to Phytophthora, Forest Research, which is the government's research agency for forestry, undertook a study of the distribution of Phytophthora in UK nurseries. And they found that approximately 50% of the samples collected from 118 nurseries were positive for Phytophthora or closely related oomycete pathogenic species, including quarantine pest species not previously reported in the UK. So there was a genuine risk of Phytophthora at the moment in our nursery industry, and actually the awareness of it is really quite poor. It was only when we proactively went and had a look to see what was there that we started to understand the extent of the issue. So I recommend going and looking at the Phyto Threats project. It's got a very good website and some really good information that will be very useful to anyone who manages a nursery or a garden centre, or any horticulture business for that matter. I also touched on ash dieback disease earlier in this presentation, and ash dieback came into the country in 2011, and it was really one of the tipping points in terms of awareness in the forestry sector of the threat of plant pests and diseases. And in fact, around that time, there was an independent panel on forestry report which detailed the number of pests and diseases that had actually been introduced into the country in the last 20 or 30 years or so. And so this graph on the left-hand side goes up to about 2010. And as you can see, there's been a real uptick in the number of pests and diseases that have been introduced into the country in the last 20 or 30 years. And here we can see Phytophthora rumorum introduced on 2 occasions, found on rhododendron and beech in the first incidents and larch in the second. And again, the cost of these pests and diseases is very expensive, and over a 100-year period, it's estimated that the cost of ash dieback, both economically, socially, and actually environmentally as well, is going to be in the region of £14.8 billion worth of damage to the UK. Now, it's very well looking at graphs and looking at maps, but what does it actually mean to our landscapes, these pests and diseases? Well, here's a picture of Oxford Botanic Gardens, and as you can see, there's a pine tree in the back, and that had Dothostroma needle blight introduced in 1997. Phytophthora conovii, 2003 on beech. Box, I'm sure many of you will be aware of the caterpillar that was introduced in 2007. Rumorum, we've already looked at, 2009, where it really came in earnest. And one of the things in the horticulture trade that we want to keep out is rose rosette virus, and obviously that's not present, so there's a threat that we can do something about. And in terms of horticultural species, we've focused mainly on tree species. One of the big concerns that we have at the moment, and one of the pests, one of the primary pests or diseases that we want to keep out of the country, is Xylella Fastidiosa. And the European Commission described Xylella as one of the most dangerous plant bacteria worldwide, with huge economic impacts for agriculture, public gardens, and the environment. Now, unfortunately, we know that it's causing devastation to olive groves in southern Europe, in some areas of southern Europe. But it's not just olive trees that it is attacking, or it can infest. It's also lavender, rosemary, nerium, erigeon, and a whole host of horticultural species. And unfortunately, the disease can spread from one species to another through a vector insect, which is the froghopper or spittlebug, which is the most likely vector in this country. And as I say, it can infect 595 plant species, and that's the latest count. It's probably likely to be higher than that. So this is a really worrying plant pest. It hasn't been detected in this country, and we want to do absolutely everything we possibly can to keep it out. Hence why we've developed the Plant Health Management Standard, or one of the primary reasons why we've developed the Plant Health Management Standard. More information on Xylella can be found on YouTube. It's a product of the Bridget project that was conducted by a host of research agencies, and this country. And if you put Xylella Helen Mirren into YouTube, you will find a very good short animated video on the subject, and it essentially covers the extent of the problem or potential problem in terms of how many species that it can infect and what the implications would be for the industry if Xylella was to arrive at a particular business. So in summary, the threat is introducing diseased plant material or plant material infested with pests, notifiable or new pests into the supply chain, and then that spreading throughout our supply chain and indeed into the wider landscape and countryside. So in 2018, a group of organizations got together and they formed the Plant Health Alliance, and the alliance's aim is to protect and enhance plant health and biosecurity, to protect plant species in the UK and beyond. And you can see a number of these organizations here, and they form the governing body of the Plant Healthy Certification Scheme. Now, the scheme is based on the Plant Health Management Standard, which is essentially 23 requirements to enhance plant biosecurity and improve the health of plants purchased, grown, and sold. And there's two important principles here, which is the concept of pest risk analysis. That's analyzing the risk of pests to your business and your customers and the wider environment surrounding you, and also the World Trade Organization's appropriate level of protection. It is a voluntary system that has been co-designed with regulation, so it's an extension of regulation. It goes over and above regulatory mechanisms, and it is a systems or proactive approach to pest risk or dealing with pests within the horticultural trade. It is based, or it's very closely aligned with a piece of work that was done in 2012 by two academics in America, and they produced a paper on it, which you can see here, which is entitled A Systems Approach for Management of Pests and Pathogens of Nursery Crops. It is Jennifer Park and Nicholas Grunewald who are the authors, and I really recommend reading this paper because it gives you an idea of what the focus of the plant health management standard is and how it's trying to help solve this issue. And again, they do a very good case study in America on the introduction of Phytophthora ramorum and how a systems approach can help stop the introduction and spread of such pests and diseases. So some key points from the paper is that end-to-end inspection, so the reliance on phytosanitary certificates, or indeed here in the GB, plant passports, has only been partially effective. And I should say that this isn't just an international issue that we're dealing with, it's absolutely a national issue as well. It's essentially the movement of plants between any business, be they in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Ireland, or the wider European Union and beyond that, the world. The pest management is actually, it's relatively complicated compared to, say, monocultures because of the heterogeneity of nurseries. That is the many pests and diseases that they have to understand given the variety of crops that are grown. And it's a daunting task for people to be able to identify these pest outbreaks and report them, because some people may think, well, is this something that really is reportable, or is it just an abiotic symptom on the plant? And so the training side of things is really important. And this paper this piece of research was at the request of the USDA, which is the government agency in America responsible for plant pathology and entomology, and trade representatives. And what they wanted to come up with was at least a set of minimum standards for managing nursery pests for interstate trade. So actually in America, this was within the United States rather than international trade, again emphasizing the importance of national supply chains. So it was really coming together of government and the trade to figure out how they could really help solve this problem by working in partnership. And it's based on the principle of HACCP, which is the hazard analysis of critical control points. And it's essentially looking at a very systematic way of identifying what the threats are to your current business model and managing them. And here you can see a list of how a HACCP analysis is conducted. And to date, there have been internationally a couple of voluntary plant health systems that have adopted this HACCP process. So we have Australian Plant Protection Standard, which is Biosecure HACCP certification, which was launched in 2015, and indeed the American equivalent, which is based on HACCP principles, was launched in 2021, so just this year. And as I say, what the systems approach is trying to do is create a systems approach to nursery management. That is, what can the industry, the managers of nurseries actually do on the ground to help solve this problem? Yes, we know we've got the endpoint inspections, which is one line of defense, but actually a lot of the control in terms of pests and diseases is best conducted or carried out within the business, so that when plants are moved from one business to another, there is an assurance that they are safe. And essentially the endpoint inspection is really a check, and that's all, but ultimately an important check that of course can flag up if there are any pests and diseases. So in terms of the plant health management standard, whether it was coincidence or it's just common sense, the site pest risk analysis framework that is essentially the core of the plant health management standard is actually very similar to the HACCP analysis. And you can see here on the right hand side a schematic of the site pest risk analysis that we have included in the plant health management standard. So the site pest risk analysis is a core element of the plant health management standard, and in the standard it fleshes it out in more detail to help you apply this site pest risk analysis to your business, and indeed self-assess, review and continually improve your plant health measures within your business. So what we're aiming to do is manage the risk within horticulture businesses from high to an acceptable level. We have guidance for nurseries, garden centres and plant retailers, landscapers, arboricultural businesses and public gardens. These are on the website and they can be found on planthealthy.org.uk. Also, there are training modules on there which are free, and you can receive a certificate on completion, successful completion, and a test at the end of the modules. As I say, they can all be found on the Plant Healthy website, along with the standard. You can see there is a link, a hyperlink there to the standard underlined. That will give you the access to the Plant Health Management Standard. There's also a self-assessment process, which is free to use, which is a set of questions that essentially enable you to measure where you are, where your business is against the Plant Health Management Standard. And at the end of that self-assessment, you'll receive a report where you'll be scored with some guidance as how to help improve your plant health biosecurity measures within your business. Once you're ready, you can apply for an audit. There's 2 certification bodies, Great Britain NSF, so please go to the website and request a callback. They'll be able to provide you with a quote and explain in better detail the processes involved with an audit. On successful completion of an audit, a business goes onto the Plant Health Alliance. Here you'll be able to see where the directory of certified businesses is. So it's under certification on the home page, and there's an updated list of the certified businesses there. Here are some of the businesses that have become plant healthy certified, and you've maybe seen that in some of the horticultural and forestry press. Here are some of the reported benefits from becoming plant healthy certified. So it links well, for example, with other schemes such as ISO 14001 and hopefully schemes like OHAS, the Grower Standard 4.0, which is a very good horticultural scheme. There are suspected productivity gains, benefits to the organization's culture, environmental benefits, a reduction of pesticides by increased monitoring, improved recording systems, improved reputation, and of course, anticipated market opportunity. There are people who specify plants that are starting to demand or ask for plant healthy now. So to recap, the threat is bigger than we think. And ultimately, we want to protect both our industry supply chains and the wider countryside. And we want to really make people and businesses proud to be plant healthy certified. It's essentially a quality management system that is demonstrating that good quality plants can be supplied from a business, whether it's a garden centre, a nursery, a landscaper, an arboricultural firm. And we really want to make sure that the staff are on board with this, that it benefits the culture of the organization, and people are ultimately proud to be plant healthy. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, please contact me through the website. Thank you.